All right, so let's go ahead and dive into this class. So my name is Dan Turkel. For those of you who may not know me, I'm the tech trainer for our office, and I'm here for all questions, comments, concerns about all the technology that we use. And in today's class, we are going to be going over everything you'd ever want to know about Docusign, okay? Sounds like some other folks are probably going to be joining in a little bit here. Are they coming?
Hey, did you guys, if you want to sign in, you get credit for these classes, so I'm sure you want to.
Oh, great.
Signing in
Is
has a
that the
function.
thingy that I heard about the teleunits? I'm sorry, I made it.
It does, it gets counted.
Come on in, come on in. There you guys are. I was about to say, where are you guys? All right, a bunch of people just came in person for those of you online. So we're just going to give them a second to settle in here.
Compared to online.
There we go. Okay, so I'll kick things off again. My name is Dan Turkel. I'm the tech trainer for our office, and I'm here for all kinds of questions and concerns about any of the technology that we use here at KW. So that can involve the MLS, Command, Docusign, all these different things. I'm here to help in many different capacities, okay? So in today's class, we're going to be going over Docusign and how we're supposed to really be using it in conjunction with Command, all right? I'm a huge fan of keeping things pretty simple and straightforward, and I'm not really a fan of PowerPoint, so I use this program instead called MindMeister. It's kind of more of how my mind works, and we're going to go through the steps involved in using Docusign, and we're going to kind of like branch out into different concepts like that, okay? One thing I want to mention before we get too far into it is that I want you guys to feel comfortable to just jump in and cut me off and ask any questions you have, because the whole point of this is to help you guys really actually understand how to use Docusign. So please feel free to jump in with any questions at any point, okay?
I have a question right with that. So a lot
Awesome.
of people have never logged into Docusign, and they also were onboarded way before Docusign was a thing at our market center. So
Okay.
how will they get their login info?
How will they get their login info? That's a good
Because the market
question.
center gives it to us.
I feel like we need to check with Rachel about that, or
Okay.
Scott Leroy Marketing, or Rachel. But normally, yeah, when I guess, yeah, let's just,
If anybody's
Hold-
not logged in,
yeah.
I can give you like Josh's if you're ready.
all right, cool. Nice.
Oh, just go log in.
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing I like to mention in teaching the class about Docusign is that you don't have to use Docusign. Okay. I sometimes get questions from folks who are in the conference rooms in our office, and they're like, Dan, I'm meeting with a client right now, and we can't figure out this one part of Docusign. I need them to sign something. And I'm just like, print the document out and sign it in person, and you could scan it and you're good to go. And you can do an entire deal without Docusign. So I always like to make that clear up front. You don't have to use it, but it is very helpful to use in a lot of different scenarios when you can't have someone sign something with pen and paper, of course. So first thing to kick us off here is that you guys should know we have this Docusign Resource Center that I put together for our market center. And it's something that is going to have all different kinds of information in here that you can use to learn really anything you want to know about Docusign. There's a ton of resources in here, and I think it's pretty helpful. So I will, I'll post this in the internal group for our office so that you guys can get it a little later, since I can't really post it in the chat room. I don't think you guys would see that here, but just keep this in mind. This is a great resource that I'd encourage you to take advantage of. Okay. So generally speaking, there's about 5 steps involved in using Docusign. Okay. So the first step is going to be to create an opportunity on a contact record. Okay. Step number 1, create an opportunity on a contact record. Step number 2 is going to be to open the opportunity in Command. And then we set up the documents in Docusign, and then we have those documents signed, and then we bring them back from Docusign into Command. So you want to think of it like a circle, right? We start in Command, and then we branch out of Command into Docusign to get the documents signed electronically by someone, and then we bring them right back into Command on the opportunity record, okay? So with that bird's eye point of view in mind, let's go ahead and dive into these steps, all right? So the first step is creating that opportunity on a contact record. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to pretend we're working with a buyer today, just for the purposes of this example. And in working with this buyer, we're going to pretend that we need them to fill out an offer, right? A sale contract. So I'm going to use that as an example. And I'm going to use a fake contact record for this example with my good friend, Daniel Turkelly here. So on a contact record, the first step you're going to do is create an opportunity. Okay. So you don't want to create an opportunity in the opportunities app. I recommend going to the contact record of the client you're going to be working with, and then clicking opportunities over here, and then clicking create opportunity. Okay. So we'll mainly need to change 2 things here. Opportunity type, we're going to need to choose obviously buyer in this example. And then commission rate, we're going to have to put something here because it's a required field. So you typically just put your, I just put 3% in there. Okay. So now that we've changed those fields, we're going to go ahead and click create. All right. So what that does is it adds a new opportunity to this contact record. I had 6 before, now I have 7 because I just created that new opportunity. So then what we're going to do is click that link that just appeared here. So June 16th, I'm going to click that link, and that takes us to the opportunity record that is associated with that contact record. Okay. It's important to understand that every opportunity record you create has a unique ID associated with that particular contact. So you can have a million opportunity records for just one contact. It just depends on how many sales you're doing with that person, right? Maybe you helped a family buy a home and you had an opportunity record for them. And then a few years later, they contact you and say they want to sell it. Well, you'd create another opportunity record for that same contact record. And that would, of course, be a listing opportunity. Okay. So in step 2, we're going to go ahead and open the opportunity in Command like we just did. And we are going to prepare the documents for this opportunity. Okay. So what you're going to do is click right here in the middle. You'll click documents. All right. Oh, you know what? Maybe I clicked the wrong opportunity. I think I was supposed to click the bottom one. I think I clicked an old one by accident. Yep, here we go. So when you click documents, this is what it's going to look like. And you are going to want to pick a checklist type. That's going to be the next step. All right. So on the left here, you'll click pick a checklist type. And by the way, I am recording this, so you guys will be able to watch this later if you want. You don't have to worry about remembering every single detail right now. So we'll click residential, assuming you're dealing with residential real estate. Obviously, if you were selling, land, or if it was a referral or a commercial deal, you would click one of those. And once you click residential, you're going to have these 3 folders that appear. And in each folder, you're going to have what I call placeholders on the right. Okay. So each of these placeholders shows you the name of the document that may or may not be required to upload to our compliance team to make sure that the documents were filled out correctly. Right. So in the consultation folder, we've got the broker disclosure form, buyer's exclusive agency agreement. In the under contract folder, we've got a few others. Some of them are conditionally required, like the government loan rider is sometimes required. Obviously, if you're using a government loan is when you would need that. So you want to upload the documents that have been filled out and completed to each of these placeholders by just clicking browse, and then you're able to find it on your computer. And once you upload all of the required documents, then you're able to just click submit to MC. The compliance team checks it. And if they kick it back, it's because you need to change something. If they don't kick it back, then it's accepted and you're good to go. And the only way you're getting paid is if everything is accepted. A key point to understand here is the whole process can stop then. You don't even have to take it a step further and bring it into DocuSign. Like I said before, if you're having everybody sign everything pen and paper, then you can just, go into the office, scan all your paperwork, save it all onto your computer as PDFs, and then manually upload each of those documents to the right placeholder, and then you're done. But if you need to have someone sign something electronically, right? Maybe you're not always going to be with that person in person, then that's when we take it a step further and get into DocuSign. I personally like to kick the whole process off by just doing everything pen and paper in the beginning. When I'm meeting with buyers and sellers, I typically have it printed out on the table. We're going over it together. I'm able to point things out and I get all that scanned. And then once we go under contract, after that point is when I personally choose to use DocuSign a little more, because if I need to send out like an inspection notice or something, I'm not going to go drive to their house to have them fill that out like I would if I were to go over the whole listing agreement and everything like that. So from this point forward, we're going to, get more into the DocuSign part of it now, but in an effort to make the class more comprehensive, I like to start at the real beginning and then bring it full circle. Okay. So now is when we'll click start a transaction. Okay. So that's in the top right here. We've picked our checklist type. Now we're going to go ahead and click start a transaction. So what that does is it's going to open up a new tab and it's going to ask us to sign in to DocuSign. If you don't have the login info like we were talking about before, I would recommend maybe reaching out to Rachel or Nicole and asking them to help with that. So my info is going to autofill here. So I'll log in. You have to log in every single time. DocuSign is a pretty secure platform and there's no way around it. You're going to have to keep logging in every time you create a new DocuSign room. And for all the .loop users out there, you should know that a DocuSign room is just another way of calling a .loop a loop. We have loops in .loop. We have rooms in DocuSign. They are the same thing. All we're talking about is a virtual folder to hold documents. Okay. The other thing that'll happen when you click start a transaction is that you'll get an email. You get an email saying that you've been invited to a room. I just delete these. I don't think there's any real, use for those emails. So I pretty much just delete that as soon as I get it in. And now we're finally in DocuSign. Okay. So again, if I were to click rooms up here, you'll see I have all these different rooms, just like you guys would have all your loops. They're pretty much the same thing. Okay. So I'll click the one I just created to dive into that room. All right. So we've signed into DocuSign and now we can go to the third step, which is to set up the documents in DocuSign. Okay. All right. So what I typically recommend doing is working through the tabs from left to right. Okay. So you'll see here, these are the tabs I'm talking about. We have details, documents, people, envelopes, messages, and history. The reason I recommend starting on the details tab is because whatever information you fill into these fields, like for the address and for the buyer name and email and all that, it's going to autofill into the forms that we're ultimately using. And that just saves you a whole lot of time rather than having to manually enter it into every form. Their name, for example, if you put their name onto the details tab, it's going to automatically fill in to all of the appropriate fields in the forms that we're going to be using. All right. So in the detail tab, some key points here, you need to manually enter some of this information because it doesn't always pull it straight from command. And the more info you fill in here, the more will autofill into your contracts. The two fields in particular that I recommend filling out most of the time are going to be location and buyer one if you're working with a buyer, or seller one if you're working with a seller. And obviously if you have two buyers, you would fill out both buyer fields, and if you had two sellers, you'd fill out two seller fields. So I'll show you what I mean here. So we're in the details tab. We're going to click edit here, in the top right. And then that enables us to change any of these fields we want. So like I said before, normally the most relevant fields to fill out are going to be the address of the property we're going under contract on or putting an offer in on, as well as the buyer or seller's contact info. So for the address, I'm just going to put 12345 Main Street, Springfield, Greene County. State, we'll put Michigan, because why not? And then postal code 65804. Okay, so we've got the address in. And now on the right side is where the buyer field is. So seller 1, we don't need that. Seller 2, we don't need that because we're not having the sellers sign anything. Listing agent 1 is not relevant here. Listing agent 2 is not relevant here. Finally, all the way down here is where we get to the buyer field. You'll see that this info did autofill from the contact record that whatever info you had in command, it's going to push it into these fields. So I don't need to change that. Honestly, you don't need a cell phone info in here for DocuSign. All DocuSign is going to care about is what's the name of the person and what's their email address, because they need to have that name show up on the the forms that they're signing, and you need to have their email so that DocuSign understands who to send that paperwork to. So we should be good to go on this one. We've got the buyer name and email, and we've got the address fully filled out here. A lot of these other fields, you really you can fill them out if you want, but I personally don't. So we can go ahead and click save. Right? So that's the details tab. Then we'll move right along to the documents tab, which is the next one. Again, we move from left to right. Documents right there. Okay, so just like .loop has the loops, DocuSign has a room, and in this room there are no documents in it right now. The default folder that you automatically get in every room that you create is called Room Docs. Okay, so it's right here, and we're going to want to start filling up that area with some forms. So we'll click Add, and then we're going to choose DocuSign Forms. So up here is where we're going to click Add, and we'll choose DocuSign Forms. But I want you to know that if you needed to upload something into the room that's just a PDF on your computer, you would just click Computer, right? And then you would just find where that PDF is, and then you would upload it to the room. And a perfect example of that is when you receive some kind of PDF attachment in an email from another agent, right? Let's say you're the listing agent and the buyer's agent emails you an inspection notice. Well, then you're going to download that inspection notice onto your computer and then upload it into the room so that you can drag the signature fields onto it and send it out through DocuSign for your client to sign. Okay, so that's one place that you'll typically add documents into the room from is by clicking Computer.
Is there an easy way to do that from your phone? Because I haven't found it yet.
From your phone, I
Wants
don't.
you to add signatures, and if there's just like, say it's a counter offer that's been signed, okay? I don't need any more signatures. So, and then I tried to upload it from like just the internet side of DocuSign. That's still, I can't find those documents. Actually, they've disappeared in all of it.
Huh. I might have to take a look at that.
Okay.
Maybe after class, we can take a closer look at that. But I'm in DocuSign right now on my phone. And if I go to the Documents tab, and I choose to add something from computer, it's not letting me because obviously I'm not on a computer, but I think if I click DocuSign Forms, I'm able to add it. So
It's not the signed thing from the phone.
yeah, because it's not, with a phone, it doesn't know like where to pull it from. It's just not the same platform, that's, I guess, why, they're saying computer as opposed to, but you can upload it from Google Drive, and that's what I would recommend as a workaround.
Okay.
So download, if you have an attachment, you can just push it to Google Drive straight from Gmail or whatever, and then you can upload it into the room by clicking, Google Drive there. So I think that's a perfect workaround, and that should hopefully save you some time. The other thing I'll say about working on your phone with DocuSign is don't bother downloading the Docusign app because it's not helpful. What you want to do, especially if you're using an iPhone, is that you want to go into Safari on an iPhone in particular, and you can save the Docusign website as like an app on your home screen so that you can always just go to it really quickly. And when you use Docusign in the browser of a phone, it actually works pretty well. You can pretty much do most of what you're able to do on your computer, on your phone, if you're just going on the website of Docusign, Rooms, rooms.docusign.com, okay? So does that answer your question?
Yes and no, but yes.
Well, in terms of the missing documents, we'll probably have to chat about that
Right,
later,
yeah.
but in terms of uploading things into the Room on your
Yeah, I think
phone, Google
good
Drive is
for
perfect for
yeah.
that, yep. And then similarly, you can, pull it from Dropbox or whatever this is. I never even heard of that box, or zip form. But Docusign Forms is the main one that you guys are going to be using, okay? This is where all of the forms are that we use as real estate agents. And the way it works, to give you some background, is we have these things called libraries, and they have all the different documents that we use. MAR is the one that we have the most of. But the problem with these libraries are that they're not organized in a way that is helpful for us as agents. It's like, okay, if you need an inspection notice, like what, I guess maybe in MAR, am I going to do a search in there? It's just, or is it MREC? Like, it's just not organized in a helpful way. So what I've done for the entire market center is I've chosen specific forms from each of these libraries and organized them into these groups that you guys see here. So if you have a seller, you'll just click residential listing documents, and then you've got each of the forms that you'd need for a seller, typically. Now, sure, there's exceptions, but generally speaking, these are the forms you're going to need for a seller. Similarly, if you're under contract or want to put an offer in, you're able to get the residential sale contract in the contract documents group. This is where you can find final walkthrough, inspection notice, counter offers, amendments, that kind of stuff. Buyer documents, all the typical ones you need for a buyer are all in here. And then miscellaneous documents is where I just threw everything else. This is where like a bunch of the other forms are, okay? So we choose Docusign Forms group. You're gonna want to select the forms that you want in the appropriate group and then add them to the room. I have a little note here. Each of these things that we're looking at, you see how it's blue, it says form. Forms are not PDFs, okay? PDFs you can think of as like, it's set in stone. You can't edit PDFs. We're not supposed to be able to edit PDFs. Whereas forms, on the other hand, are meant to be edited. They're gonna have all the fields that are clickable and changeable. You can check all the checkboxes and everything like that. So forms are not PDFs. A form is the template we use to make a PDF. And this is important because forms are reusable, all right? You're not gonna be able to, let's say, for example, you have an amendment of the amendment form in your room, and you fill it out with, maybe changing the closing date, and you send it out, you get it signed, and then a little later you need to change something else and you need to do another amendment. You're not going to add another amendment form to the room. You're just going to edit the amendment form that you already have in that room to do it over again.
So they are editable.
Forms are editable. They're meant to be edited, and each form in Docusign has all the fields that you need to fill out. They're all changeable and everything like
Even
that.
after it's an envelope, even after it's been sent off and signed.
That form is permanently editable. You will never not be able to edit a form, but once it's signed, then
Does it make
it's
it a
set in
PDF?
stone. Then it makes it a PDF, and then you can no longer edit it.
That's
Okay.
what
Yep. So you can keep reusing forms as many times as you need to. And obviously you can click this preview button here if you want to remind yourself, oh wait, what was that document? That kind of thing. Okay. So you'll click on one of the forms in the room to edit it. And once it opens, various fields should autofill based on what you entered earlier in the details tab. So let's say we want to add the residential sale contract to this room, okay? Because we're working with the buyer and they want to put an offer in. So I'm going to select that there. And then I'm going to click add selected. And now I've got it here. One thing I like to point out here is you can change the order in which they're being sorted. I've found that the most useful way of sorting it for me personally is changing it to show the ones that were added most recently, push them to the top. And another thing to point out is you're able to look at it in list view or grid view. I personally like list view. I feel like it just is a little cleaner that way, but just know that those options exist. All right. Yes, you are welcome. So again, once we open it, various fields are going to autofill based on what you entered earlier in the details tab. So when I click on residential sale contract, you're going to see that the buyer's name appears at the very top automatically. And the buyer's name will appear wherever it needs to on any form you put into the room, because we made sure it was correctly entered into the details tab of the room. That's why I always say start on the details tab. So it puts it there automatically. Same with the address. I don't even have to put that in any form because it's going to pull it from the details tab. Okay. So during this step, you're going to want to enter any text into the text boxes that are already there and check off any of the check boxes in the check boxes that are already there. So if you needed to enter something into special agreements, then this is the step in which you do that, right? So all these things are editable. I'm going to put, our offer price is going to be $1 bajillion. We're going to put closing at Titan title. And, let's say special agreements, we're like, we got to write something in, whatever we put, we got to check the boxes. And let's say that was it. We looked through it and we edited everything we needed to edit. Okay. That's what we do at that step, because in a later step, which we're about to get to, when we package it together in what's called an envelope, that's when we're actually going to be able to add other checkboxes if we need to, and signature fields and different things like that. But pretty much all the signature fields, text fields, and checkboxes that you'd need should already be there for you by default in our forms, because that's something Docusign does. When we add a new form into Docusign, they put all of these editable fields everywhere it needs to be. Every single spot that we need to put something, it's going to be editable, and it might autofill based on something you put into the details tab. But the key concept to grasp at this point is we are not doing anything with signatures yet, okay? At this step, we are only editing the fields to put numbers and text and click checkboxes and that kind of stuff, all right? Important note, for most of the forms within a Docusign room, you are able to click on them and fill them out like we just did. But for some of them, like the seller's disclosure, you are not able to do that. But once you add a form like that one, which also happens with the lead-based paint disclosure, you'll see that the text boxes and checkboxes do appear at that point. And this is because it's tagged for your sellers to fill out. Legally, you as an agent should not be filling these fields in for your client. They are pre-tagged for seller one, seller 1 and 2 to fill out themselves. So I get a lot of calls from people who are not sure why they can't edit any of these fields. They're like, Dan, I'm in the form. None of the fields are clickable. I can't change anything in there, and I don't know why. It's typically because they're using the seller's disclosure or lead-based paint disclosure, and you're not supposed to be the one filling that out. You're supposed to have the client filling that out. So it's supposed to be like that. And you're a-okay just sending it off to them as it is, and they'll be able to click on it and sign it and put text into the fields and stuff on their end. All right. Okay. So once you've filled in the documents, you're going to select each one by clicking in the upper left-hand corner of one of them, or on the left-hand side if you're in list view. And once they're selected, you can choose what you want to do with them. So we have some options that appear when we select it. So let's save and close it. Let's pretend that we've filled it out completely. Our offer is fully ready for the buyer to sign. So we're going to select it. And then these options appear now. So you can copy that, you can move it, you can email it. This little pen icon is to create an envelope. You can archive it, or you can delete it, okay? For most things, I don't recommend deleting them. You can just archive it and then it's going to move it out of sight, out of mind. You're not going to see it anymore and it's going to be just as good as being deleted. What you're going to need to do most often is click this button, create an envelope, okay? So think about it, just like if we were in person and you needed to mail something to someone to have them sign it, you're going to put it in an envelope and send it out to them, right? So same logic applies to Docusign. We filled out our form, just as we would have pen and paper. We're going to select it and then we're going to choose to put it in an envelope to send it out to that person to sign. So we click create envelope, okay? So we'll click create envelope and then this will package them together and create an envelope for us to send our client the documents. So now we'll go ahead and set up the envelope, okay? So on the top here, you'll see that you can change the envelope name if you want. This is a personal preference. I never really bother changing the envelope name, but you can if you want to keep it organized and know exactly what each of your envelopes are called. Second step is to make sure that you have the right documents in your envelope. So we just added the one form, so that looks good to me. You can always add more if you wanted to from the room. The next step is to add recipients to the envelope. We need to choose who we're going to send this to, okay? So it's going to be best to add what are known as pre-tagged roles because that will match what the contract says it should be and what the person is. So you're going to select the appropriate pre-tagged roles based on who you want to sign the document, all right? So I'll show you what I mean here. We click add recipient, pre-tagged roles, room participants, or email address. So by default, certain people automatically become a part of the room you're in, like Jim Bolin. He automatically is a part of all our rooms. You as the agent will automatically be a part of the room, different people like that. So you can just click room participants and choose one of them. Alternatively, if someone's not in the room and you can just click email address and manually put their name and their email and then send it out to them and they can click to sign and everything. But typically what you're going to want to do when you're working with forms is you're going to want to click pre-tagged roles, all right? When you click pre-tagged roles, it's going to show each of the roles that are associated with that particular form. Docusign knows that only the buyer agent, listing agent, buyer 1, 2, seller 1, 2 are the people that should be filling out that form. There's virtually no one else that would need to fill out any of the fields on the residential sale contract. So what you'll do now is choose who is going to fill out, you're going to basically choose the recipient for each role. So you have to tell Docusign who is being assigned to the role. So for buyer agent, I'm going to choose Dan Turkel. For buyer 1, I'm going to choose, Zoom thing keeps getting in the way. I'm going to choose Danny Turkelli. And for, well, that's it. I just need buyer agent and buyer 1 for the, for an offer at least. Okay. It's important to understand here that every form has different roles associated with it. And you'll need to just kind of match them up as I just did here. So I'll add those to there. Okay. The next step is going to be to choose what you want to have appear in the email subject and body of the email that the person gets who's signing it. So I'm just going to put, this is the subject, and I'll put, this is the body of the email. Because we're going to run through a full example and I'll show you guys exactly what that looks like from the client's point of view, so you know what they're going to see on their end. Okay. So at that point, once we've added a message to all the recipients, we're going to click next. Okay. And you'll then be brought to a page that enables you to adjust all the fields on the document you're sending if need be. So we've set up our envelope. We're ready to, almost ready to put it in the mailbox in a way. So we click next. And now it takes us to a totally new page right before we're sending it to the client, in which we're able to verify that all of the signature fields are where they need to be. Okay. a lot of people will get tripped up on this. So it's important to understand that you don't do anything with any of the signature fields until the very end. Right before you're about to send this to the client is when you put the signature fields and make sure they're all where they need to be. You'll find that I can't edit any of these fields anymore. Remember before we were able to put, whatever that purchase price is, I can't change that now. I'm not supposed to be able to change it. That's editable in a previous step. Once you put the form into an envelope like we just did here, it's set in stone. We're only meant to drag these standard fields over for the client to interact with if they need to. The beauty of it is we typically don't have to add any of these fields because in Docusign Forms, it automatically puts the fields that need to be in the form where they need to be. So for example, you see me as the agent here, Dan Turkel. I didn't drag that signature field there. Docusign already knows it's supposed to be there. The same with date signed, okay? Same with the buyer. The buyer field is automatically going to be where it needs to be. You don't need to change that. But if you wanted to, you could drag over maybe the initial field and put it here. And then they would also have to click to initial there. Or maybe you needed there to be some text here. You forgot to write something. So you drag the text field over and then you click on it, write whatever you want. And then you've got that there and you can resize it and stuff if you want. If you're doing text though, I would say you want to change it to be read only and not a required field, because by having it read only, it's not going to require them to interact with it. Whereas if you kept it as a required field, it would require the client to like click on it and stuff before they're able to complete the form. And that's just not necessary for us as agents with these things. They don't normally need to interact with the text that you put into it. Okay. So 9 times out of 10, when you're using forms, you don't have to add any additional fields because Docusign already puts all the fields in the correct spots where they need to be. I'll point out that the agent here in this example is yellow and the buyer is blue. It's not always those colors. As you add more people, more colors come to be, but it is color coded. So as the agent, we're yellow here, but if I were to click the buyer's name, then it's blue and you'll see they're all blue. So you're able to kind of get a feel for who's signing where based on color. And I'll also point out that on the right-hand side, you have thumbnails for each of the pages in each of the forms that you've added to the envelope. And they're each bookmarked with the appropriate color based on who needs to sign where. So if I were just like, oh, wait, where's that page that I have to sign? Oh yeah, it's the yellow one. Where's that? Oh yeah, that's it right there. Perfect. So that's kind of how that part works. I'll also add that if you click preview, you're going to be able to see what it looks like from every person's perspective. So right now we're previewing it from the buyer's perspective, Daniel Turkelly. And when they click the link in their email to take them to Docusign, this is what it's going to look like. So they're going to click start, and then it automatically brings them to where they need to sign. They click sign, and then they would click finish. So you're able to see, before you send things out, you're able to verify that it's working as it's supposed to. Okay. And you can also change that if you want to view in tablet form and also in mobile view as well. And it'll like kind of compress everything. So it just makes it a little smaller. Okay. So that is how we get to the point in which we're ready to send out the envelope and get the signatures. I like to pause at this point before we send it out and ask if anyone has any questions about anything up until this point. Does all that make sense so far? Okay, awesome. So what we'll do now is click send. Everything has been set. In a previous step, we filled in all the fields. In this step, we made sure all the signature fields and date signed and all that stuff, the things that like the client actually interacts with, all of that is set. So now we are finally ready to click send. Okay. So now what happens is if you send something to yourself to sign as the agent, you'll get an email letting you know that you have a document that you need to sign, and then whoever else you're sending it to, they're going to get an email as well, letting you know that something needs to be signed. Okay. So that was the third step, is setting the documents up in Docusign. Now we're ready to have those documents signed that we sent out. So what we're going to do is log into the pretend client's email and sign the document. So I've got my email pulled up here. Let's refresh this. So this is what it's going to look like on from the client's point of view, right? So they get an email. Remember, I put this as the subject. So that's where it shows up. And then this is the body of the email. That's where that would show up. So if you wanted to, you could write something in there like, hey, please click the yellow button above to be taken into Docusign so that you can click to sign the documents as needed. All right. So they will click review document. And then it'll bring them into Docusign. It'll always ask, Docusign wants to know your location, allow block. You can click allow, and then you'll click continue. And then just like in that preview, we're going to be able to click start. And then it brings them right down to where they need to sign. When the client opens that form to sign it, you'll get an email letting you know that it says Daniel Turkelly viewed, this is the subject. So you're able to know exactly when your clients are opening things. So sometimes I'll have somebody and they're like, oh, I didn't get it. I didn't see anything. And I'm like, I know for a fact you opened this thing. I have the email here. It's telling me you opened it. So obviously something is getting, mixed up. But I like that feature because it's helpful if you're in a time sensitive situation to at least know that that client opened it. So once they open it, you'll have them read through it, do whatever you want at that point, and then you'll click sign, and then it'll automatically just give them a default signature. You can just do use saved, and then now it's signed. It's not done yet. Okay. Some clients, they think, okay, I click sign, and then they just shut their computer off. You have to let them know that in order to complete the process, once they click sign, they have to click finish to kind of finish that part of it. All right. Then it asks them to log into Docusign. That's not necessary. They can just click no thanks. And now that client has finished signing. Okay. So if we were to go back into Docusign, I want to point out here, if I were to go to history, you can see exactly what's happening in this room. So at 2:32 p.m., I created the envelope that has a subject of, this is the subject, and then it was registered. And then at 2:44, you'll see that it was signed by the buyer. So you have like a time-stamped process to show you exactly what's happening throughout the whole process. So if we were to go back to envelopes, you'll see that this one still needs my signature. So I can click that, and you'll see it's time-stamped when the buyer one, they signed it 2:44, and then they completed it. Now the current person, the person who still needs to sign it, is me as the agent. Okay. It's very important to remember that you cannot access the signed form until everybody has signed it. If you have like 5 people signing and you really need it quick, like you're not going to get it back to you with all the signatures until every single person has signed it. So sometimes if I'm in like a time sensitive situation, I'll just like get the signatures I absolutely need to have. And then maybe like a little later or something, I'll add the other people to it, just because.
Add an agent later or whatever for the listing agent to send it their way.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like who's supposed to sign where, I would leave that up to you and a broker to have that conversation. I'm just saying you're not going to get a copy of the fully signed document until every single one of the recipients has done what they needed to with it. Okay. So now I'm going to click sign as the agent, and it'll look very similar to the other one. We're just going to click continue. We're going to click start, and then it brings us to the signature field for the agent. We'll click sign, And then just like before, we click finish, okay? Now that the second of two parties have signed it, it has been completed, and you will get an email letting you know that everybody has signed it and it's good to go. Okay.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
I'm so sorry.
Mhm.
So say you don't want an email every time that someone has viewed the document. In the history, if they haven't fully signed it, in the history, can you see if they have viewed it there?
I don't think so. That's a
Oh,
good
sorry.
question. I think if you needed a record of that, it's just going to be via email. I don't think, yeah, because look, that's the proof right there. It's showing when it was signed, but it's not showing when it was viewed. That would be nice, but yeah. Yep. Oh, you know how?
Yeah.
How do you do it?
So when you are in your, I'm waiting for that envelope. I have lazy class. Click on that. They go to more. And then if they didn't all sign, it'll have you.
Oh, see, I learned something new today too. Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I never even thought to click there. So there you go.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. So now that everyone has completed it, it'll show up in green as completed. And two things are going to happen. The first thing is in your inbox in Gmail, here, I'll just go to my KW email here. You're going to get, this. It's going to say completed, whatever the subject was, and then rooms notification, signed documents in the room. So you'll get an email sent to you automatically letting you know that that was signed, and you'll get the PDF in that email too. So you can just click to download that if you need to, and then it goes on the bottom there. Okay. You'll also have it appear in the Documents tab now. So remember, we had the form. Now two new things have appeared. The certification is just part of like what makes DocuSign secure. And it just shows all the stuff that you don't really need. So a lot of times I just archive these to keep them out of sight, out of mind. I like to try and keep things organized. So I just select it and I just click archive, not deleting it, just kind of moving it out of the way. Now this one is showing green as signed. Now that is a PDF. You are no longer able to edit this. This has been signed and it is now set in stone. So you can see here, it's going to have the actual signatures on it. Nothing is clickable. And this is the one that you're now going to be able to select and then click download. And now you're going to be able to download that fully completed and fully signed PDF to your computer and then attach it to an email and do whatever you need to do with it. Okay. The form is still editable, right? If you wanted to submit another offer on a different property, you can just go right back into that form, and we're going to have all the fields still editable. We can click on anything we want, check any of the check boxes. All of that stuff is still changeable. And then we can put it in another envelope and send it out and have them sign it again if we wanted to. Okay. All right. So now we get to the final step. We've gotten the documents signed by everyone. Now we want to bring those signed documents from DocuSign back into Command. So we're going to go back into Opportunities, and then we're going to click Add a File for the documents. Okay. So let's go back into the opportunity. And for contract, we're going to choose Attach Files from DocuSign, and then Working Folder. We're just going to need to choose Room Docs. We have to select what folder the document is in that we want to pull it from. So remember, we're in this Room Docs folder here. So we choose Room Docs. And now we're able to click here. We need to refresh it. We'll go to Contract. And here it is. You see, we've got the one. Now notice it's only showing the completed one. It's not also showing the form, because we can't add forms to these placeholders. It's supposed to work that way. We're only supposed to be able to add PDFs, which are what matter, right? They're the signed documents. So if I click that, Now I've assigned that PDF to this placeholder. And that is what we need to do for every single one of the ones that are required, and sometimes for the ones that are conditionally required. And what's pretty cool about this is not too long ago, Docusign and Command were not linked in the way they are now. You used to have to download PDFs to your computer from Docusign and then manually upload things. And it was kind of like a, not a smooth process. Now, because Docusign and Command are linked in this way, we're able to just very smoothly pull things from our Docusign room and assign them to the placeholders on the opportunity record. And that's what you're going to do for each of these placeholders in each of these folders. And once you have assigned each of the appropriate forms to each placeholder, then we just click submit to MC. And then the compliance team makes sure that everything is done correctly, and they'll kick it back if it's not done correctly. You'll get a notification up here, this little red bell. And if it is done correctly, then I think it says approved or something, and then you're good to go. And once everything is approved, that's when this guy comes into play and is able to help you get paid. All right. So that is basically the gist of the entire process. That is how we begin in Command. We go through Docusign to get things signed electronically, and then bring those documents back from Docusign into the opportunity record in Command to submit to compliance. I want to pause again and see if anyone has any questions about the entire process before I dive into a few tips. Does all that make sense? We are here to make sure you guys understand Docusign. So now's the time. If you have any questions at all, please do not be afraid to ask. Anything at all? Awesome. Okay. So some general tips. This is one of the biggest game changers I can share with you guys are form templates. This is super helpful, especially for those of us who are like, putting out a lot of offers all the time and really needing to use the same forms over and over, and you don't want to keep writing the same information into each of the fields. If we go to My Docs in Docusign, and then we choose Form Templates here, we are able to save certain text and checkboxes that are checked wherever we want in any of the in any of the forms that we have. So in order to do that, you click Create Form Template, and then you choose where you want the form from. So I'm not going to choose from a library. You always want to choose from a group since they're better organized that way. And then we'll choose maybe residential contract documents. And let's say we wanted to choose the residential sale contract, because I like to use that as an example, because your real estate agent license number is never going to change. You're always going to need to enter that same number into that field towards the bottom of the contract every single time. So if you choose residential real estate contract, which I'm not going to do because I already created a template, but once you choose that, it's going to show up like this, like it did before. All the fields are going to be fillable. You can check any of the check boxes and things like that. You can write whatever you want anywhere. You'll see for me, I always like to close with Melissa Tate at Titan Title. She's just, I don't know, I like working with her, and the address is always Salventura. So I never really change that part unless I have to. Then I also always like to have I always put in special agreements, appraisal and financing contingencies to run through closing, just because you guys know just as well as I do, appraisers are super booked, and I just like to have those contingencies run through closing. So I always put that in there. And then broker's firm is always KW. Broker's firm state license number is always that. State license number for me is always that. And those are the fields that never really change. So when I click save and close, I now have those fields saved in that template. So if I were to go back in to the room, and if I were to add that form like we did before, let me actually delete both of these out so I can add the form again, because I can't add the form if it's already in the room. So I'm going to click just like before, we go to DocuSign Rooms, then we're going to click Residential Contract Documents. And the first time I selected it and we just added it, and that would be a blank form. But notice here, because we have a template created for the residential sale contract, if I click that, I'm now able to choose that template. And now when I add selected, you'll see that if I open that form now, it's going to have that information added into there. And this can be a huge time saver for things like, you know, the broker disclosure form. Like, look now, see, it's automatically in there. Broker disclosure form is another good one. Buyer's agency agreement. I have a template for that because I have the same info I typically put in certain fields for that. So just keep that in mind. Form templates are like super handy. And I know a lot of people that come from Dotloop are like, man, I wish we could do that. Well, we couldn't for a while, but now we can. And it's as simple as what I just showed you. The other thing I want to mention is that you can create folders within a DocuSign room. And I always do this to keep things organized. So right now we just have room docs. If you click actions, add folder, I normally do one for buyer docs. And then I normally do one for, you know, what is it? You know, miscellaneous or something. How do you spell that? I don't know. I definitely spelled that wrong. So you'll click, you'll drag, and now you're able to start keeping things organized. And I think that's super important. The further you get into a deal, the more documents you're going to get. And it just gets kind of confusing when it's all just stacked on top of one another. So I like to archive things I don't need or I don't need to see, and then only keep the things I need in here and then move them around into the folders to keep everything nice and clear. Another feature I really like about DocuSign is that we can split documents pretty easily. So if I were to need to split this contract, this PDF, you can't split forms, but you can split PDFs. You just right click on it and then you click split. And now it shows you all of the pages of that document, and you're able to move your mouse around and zoom in to see what they are. And then you know, add document. Let's say we wanted to split this 8-page contract into 3. Well, then we can name it first part 1 to 2, second part 3 to 5, and then third part 6 to 8. And then you see it highlights the ones here. So now when we click save, it's going to retain that original PDF, which is this, and it creates 3 new ones. And that can be super handy, especially when, you know, maybe you get an offer and like the seller's disclosure and the measurement disclaimer is a part of the same PDF of the offer. Well, you're able to just bring it in here and split it out and have everything nice and organized, and then drag it into the appropriate folders to keep everything nice and in order. And that brings us to 2:59 p.m. So was that helpful? Do any of you guys have any other questions? Does DocuSign make a little more sense now? Okay, awesome. I'm getting head nods. The other thing I'll add, and I always say this at the end of all my classes, is that if you find a fixer-upper that you can sell, please call Dan Turkel, because I'm an investor, I am a cash buyer, and I'm always looking for our next deal. So please feel free to reach out if you have tech questions or, you know, if you ever come across a rundown house, okay? Awesome. All right, thank you guys.